So good day to everyone. I'm Israel Zenar Bautista, and today I'll be discussing about Philippine satellites. So a little background about me. So I finished my bachelor's degree in Electronics and Communications Engineering and my master's degree in Energy Engineering from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. And currently, I'm taking up my doctorate degree in Space Engineering in Kyushu Institute of Technology here in Japan. From 2014 to 2018, I have been a research associate of the Philippine Space Technology Projects Phil Microsat and Stamina for Space, which I will discuss later on, which built WaterOne and WaterOne. And from 2018 to 2021, aside from being a graduate student here in Japan, I've also been the project manager of the Birds 4 project. So let's begin our discussion with satellites. So what are satellites? So by its definition, a satellite is a body that orbits around another body. So there are two main types of satellites, which are the natural satellites, like our moon, and satellites of our other planets, such as Titan and Phobos. And there are artificial or man-made satellites, which we will be focusing on today's talk, which are the man-made satellites made by the Philippines. So as you can see in the picture, you can see a photo of a natural satellite, that's the moon, and artist rendition of a artificial satellite orbiting the Earth. So why do we need to build satellites? So a lot of things that we enjoy today are actually made possible by using satellite technology. Some of these are GPS for navigation, so we use it in our phones, for our Google Maps, etc. For communication, so there are satellite phones which can connect you to anyone from anywhere in the planet through satellites. Also, we use satellites for weather forecasting, so using a satellite to take an image of the Earth, a certain portion of the Earth, 24 hours a day, we can tell where typhoons are directed or going to. We also use satellites to monitor our climate and our environment. So using changes in the vegetation, in the water bodies, we can see how over time our environment changes. We also use satellites for our entertainment. So if you know satellite cable services, wherein you point satellite dish towards a certain location where the satellite is located. So that is how we use satellites for entertainment. And also, we use satellites for safety and disaster response. So in that image, you can see the several usage and applications of satellites and the data that they provide. So for the Philippines in particular, we need satellite technology because of our environment. So the Philippines has been a highly biodiverse country, and our lands are agriculturally rich, wherein we have plenty of flora and fauna found in our country. And we need to monitor this so that we could use this, leverage on this for our daily lives, for our natural resources. We also need satellite data for disaster and risk management. So the Philippines is one of the regions in Earth that is frequently visited by typhoons, almost around 20 per year. And damages to our country brought by these typhoons could further be lowered by mitigating these disasters before they even come. So we will use, or our country uses satellite data for these two main purposes. So the first known satellite, or first owned satellite by the Philippines, is the Aguila, or the Mabuhay satellite. Okay. So this satellite was launched in May of 1987, March of 1987, under the name Palapa B2P. Okay. So this satellite was originally owned by an Indonesian company and built by an American company originally. And then it was bought by the Mabuhay Satellite Corporation, which was owned by PLDT in 1996. So this satellite, as you can see in the picture, It's a more than 7 foot satellite in a geostationary orbit with its main function for telecommunication. It was later deorbited in 1998 as it finished its operation, and it was decommissioned into its orbit. So after that 1996 to 1998 acquisition of that satellite, the Philippines have been reliant on foreign countries to provide space or satellite data that it uses for its day-to-day activities such as weather forecasting, agricultural prediction, among others, and communications. But then our government eventually decided to take its first step towards self-sustainability in space technology in 2014 by launching the Microsat program. So through the Department of Science and Technology and the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technology Research and Development, the Philippine Microsatellite program was launched. So they found that self-sustainability is much needed as we rely heavily on data coming from foreign resources which do not come on demand and actually cost significantly. So they calculated that the costs of buying this data versus the cost of owning or building our own satellites are actually almost equal. Hence, they started this our journey towards self-sustainability in space technology. So the Microsat program is a 3-year space research which spanned between 2014 to 2018. So a total of 3 years in between those 4 years was the execution of the program. And the goal is to mainly launch and operate 2 microsatellites. This is in partnership with the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Hokkaido University, and Tohoku University from Japan. This program is comprised of 5 projects. So Project 1 is the microsatellite bus development, wherein they mainly focused on building and launching the 2 microsatellites that are programmed in this Phil microsatellite program. Project 2 is assigned on building the ground receiving station, which will communicate with our satellites once they are in orbit. Project 3 is assigned on development of data processing, archiving, and distribution systems. So of course, after the data has been received by the ground station, you have to process it to make it readable or understandable by the general public and usable for different purposes. Project 4 is assigned on calibration and validation of remote sensing instruments. So the payloads of the satellites have to be calibrated and validated, and this is the task of Project 4. And finally, the Project 5 is designed on remote sensing product development. So from the satellite data, raw data, they process this such that they could gather different scientific information from this data, and which is later used for the different purposes such as agricultural monitoring and water monitoring of our country. After 2018, the Microsat program ended, and its efforts were continued by the Space Technology and Applications Mastery, Innovation and Advancement, or the Stamina for Space program. Under this program, there are again 5 projects. The first one, optical, is tasked on optical payload technology, in-depth knowledge acquisition, and localization. So the goal of optical is to develop our own payloads. So previously, our payloads are made or bought from companies or from foreign sources. So what Optical Project wants is to localize this and allow Filipinos to build and design their own optical payloads. The PHL-50 aims to build the PHL-50 standard bus. This is the localized bus of the WaterOne and WaterOne satellite, which will serve as our space heritage, our standard 50 kilogram microsatellite bus for future space missions. The third project, the Step Up project, which we were also part of, is the space science and technology proliferation through university partnership. So the goal of this project is to further propagate and proliferate the knowledge in space technology through university partnerships. The fourth one, the GRASPED, is the ground receiving, archiving, science, product development, and distribution. So this is similar to project 3 of the Phil microsatellite program. So they are mainly focused on processing the data that is received from the satellites. And the last project, the ASP, or the Advanced Satellite Development and Know-how Transfer for the Philippines, is tasked on developing the future satellites that the Philippines would build. On August 2019, the Republic Act 11363, or the Philippine Space Act, was signed by our president. And this allowed for the establishment of the Philippine Space Agency. The Philippine Space Agency has its mandate as the primary policy, planning, coordinating, implementing, and administrative entity of the government. And it focuses on 6 key development areas that you can see in that figure on the right. So it focuses on national security and development, space research and development, space education and awareness, international cooperation, space industry capacity building, and hazard management and climate change. So now we will go on to the first Filipino-made satellite, WaterOne. So WaterOne is an Earth observation microsatellite. So its main focus is to observe how our country changes over time. So its main payloads are cameras. So it's a 52.5 kilogram satellite with dimensions of 55 by 35 by 55 centimeters. So you can see in those images on the right, our Filipino engineers, I think this one is Lure, doing or assembling the satellite. And the image next to it is when the satellite was being tested. This was actually here in Kyushu Institute of Technology. It's undergoing vibration test to see if the satellite would survive the launch environment. And the third picture on the bottom is when the satellite is being loaded into the pod before it was transported to the rocket, which will bring it to the International Space Station. So the WaterOne was mainly built and assembled in Tohoku University here in Japan, while its payload, the cameras, were tested and built in Hokkaido University. On March 23, 2016, the WaterOne was launched into space towards the International Space Station. And on April 27, 2016, it was deployed from the International Space Station and started its mission in space. Eventually, the WaterOne returned back to Earth. And when it returned back to Earth, it disintegrated because of the high heat during the entry. And essentially, it was decommissioned on that day, April 6, 2020. So the images on the right is the image of the rocket that brought the WaterOne to ISS, and a picture from the International Space Station when the WaterOne was deployed into orbit. So the WaterOne carries several cameras or payloads. The first one is the High Precision Telescope, which has a 3-meter spatial resolution. So every pixel is equivalent to 3 meters. And operates in the red, green, blue, and near-infrared band. So its main use is for damage estimation of disasters and calamities, so that we can zoom in into certain areas in the Philippines, especially during times of post-disaster or post-calamities. Another payload is the Spaceborne Multispectral Imager. So it is a 80 meters camera, spatial resolution camera with liquid crystal tunable filter, which allows it to capture images from 420 nanometer to 650 nanometer in the visible band. and 700 nanometer to 1050 nanometer in the near infrared region. So this allows us to assess ocean productivity and changes in vegetation in our country. So aside from those two main cameras, we also have the wide field camera and the middle field camera. So they are more on the engineering part. They are used to help the high precision telescope and the spaceborne multispectral imager focus their cameras. So these are some of the example photos, or some of the photos that were taken by the WaterOne. The first image is from the wide field camera. So this is a picture of cloud formations above Japan. The second image is over Tohoku, again over Japan, taken using the middle field camera. And the third one is a picture over Zamboanga, taken by the high precision telescope. So there are also several images, thousands of images taken by the WaterOne. Most of them are archived and can be accessed through the website, the Philippine Microsatellite Project. So after the WaterOne, the WaterOne, which is also part of the Phil Microsat program, was also developed, which is our second Earth observation microsatellite. So its dimensions when stowed is 50 by 50 by 50 centimeters, as you can see in the images on the right. So this one is more cubic in its shape. Okay. It was launched into space on October 29, 2018, and its difference from the WaterOne is it is released in a sun-synchronous orbit, meaning the WaterOne passes over Philippines on a specific time. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's around 10 a.m. or up to 12 noon every day. Okay. So it has similar payloads to the WaterOne, with additional payloads such as the enhanced resolution camera, the amateur radio unit. It also features a deployable solar array to allow it to gather more energy from the sun. And also has the extended attitude control unit and zenith sun sensor module. So picture on the right shows the H2A rocket when the WaterOne was launched into space. So some of the products or some of the outputs of the WaterOne can be shown here. So the first one, I think this is taken over Taal, if I'm not mistaken. And the next one is high precision telescope image over Rizal. So this one compares the urbanization of the Rizal province. And the third one is actually a picture of the moon. So during calibration of the WaterOne cameras, they tried using the moon as a reference. So they pointed the cameras towards the moon, and this is what it looked like. So another new payload of the WaterOne is its amateur radio unit, which we are personally part of in developing and design. So this amateur radio unit is an FM transponder. So actually our scan or our amateuristas can communicate with each other using the WaterOne's FM transponder when it is turned on at specific times of the day. So this can be used especially as backup communication in times of disaster when communication lines are down. So like what happened during Typhoon Yolanda, when there's the cell sites essentially are down because of the strong winds, and if such disasters result to those like down of the communication networks, so we can use the WaterOne to talk with each other and amateur radios. Now we move forward to our country's first cube satellite, MyOne. So MyOne is part of the Birds 2 project by Kyushu Institute of Technology alongside Malaysia, Bhutan, and Japan. So this is a little step back from the 50 kilogram sized microsatellite to a cube satellite, which is 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters in dimension, and only weighs at a maximum of 1.3 kilograms. So picture on the right shows the Birds 2 project logo. and the members of Birds 2 project. So we have two Filipinos there, Joven Javier and Adrian Salces. And the three satellites that were made by Birds 2 project, which is in the middle, you can see is MyOne. So MyOne was launched into space on June 29 of 2018 and deployed on August 10, 2018 from the International Space Station. So it returned back to Earth on November 23, 2020. So image on the right, you can see the rocket after its launch and the satellites after they were deployed, taken from the International Space Station. So MyOne has the following missions. So the first is the remote data collection by store and forward. Second is image capture using commercial off-the-shelf modules. It also demonstrated a commercial off-the-shelf GPS chip and a magnetic field measurement, an isotropic magnetoresistance sensor, and automatic packet report system, Digipeater, for amateur radio community. So some photos of those payloads are shown on the right. MyOne is then followed by Maya 2, which we are part of, or we personally built. So this is part of the Birds 4 project by Kyushu Institute of Technology alongside Paraguay and Japan. So similar to MyOne, it's a cube satellite with the following dimensions, 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters, and 1.3 kilograms in maximum weight. So shown on the right is the logo, the Maya 2 satellite itself, and the team who built the satellite. So Maya 2 was launched this year, just this February 21st, and deployed from the International Space Station on March 14 of 2021. So the image on the right shows the Cygnus rocket from where the satellite was loaded, and it was brought to the International Space Station. And at the bottom is the picture from the event when the satellites were deployed into space. Its missions are almost similar with MyOne. So it has the remote data collection by store and forward, as well as the image capture. In addition, it demonstrates the new solar cell technology called peroxide solar cell, and demonstrates the use of the antenna structure of the satellite structure as an antenna. It also does the automatic packet reporting system Digipeater, which is mainly for the amateur radio community, and it tests latch-up detection chip and commercial off-the-shelf glue for solar cell attachment, as well as demonstrate active attitude stabilization for a cube satellite and control with commercial off-the-shelf reaction wheel as shown on the image on the right. So during Maya 2's development, alongside with it was the development of Maya 3 and Maya 4, which is the first Philippine university-built satellite. So Maya 3 and 4 were built under the Step Up project, which is part of the Stamina for Space program. And it was made by graduate students supported by the Department of Science and Technology's SEI, or Science Education Institute, to build a localized version of the MyOne CubeSat. So the design of Maya 3 and Maya 4 are based on MyOne CubeSat. So its mission is identical to MyOne with the addition of the near-infrared camera mounted on the Maya 4 satellite. So shown on the right is the image of their logo and the flight model, the satellites that were made, and the scholars which studied their master's or took their master's degree in electrical engineering, major in nanosatellite technology in University of the Philippines, Diliman. So these two satellites were launched on August 29, 2021, and they were deployed on October 6, 2021, so just a few days ago. So shown on the right is a photo of the satellites being launched into space. So what is next? Our next satellite to be launched is the Maya 5 and Maya 6. So we're looking forward to this next two cube satellites. So this would be the second batch of locally built CubeSats following the Maya 2 design. Okay. So currently they are in the engineering model phase. They're building the satellite, understanding how its parts work, and testing it. And hopefully it would be launched into space by 2022. And it has similar missions as Maya 2 with an addition of the experimental onboard computer, which we are hoping would be used for future CubeSats that the Philippines will be building or designing. Aside from Maya 5 and Maya 6, we are looking forward to our largest satellite yet, MOLA. So it means a multispectral unit for land assessment. And this satellite is a 130 kilogram Earth observation satellite that is commercial grade, as they say. This is in partnership with the Surrey Technology in United Kingdom. And actually the term or the name MOLA means plant in Ilocano language. So we're hoping that this would be launched on 2023. And since its main purpose is for land assessment, its payloads is true color camera with a 5-meter resolution and 120 kilometers watt width, operating in 9 spectral bands for environmental applications. Also, it will carry an automatic identification system or AIS and an automatic dependent surveillance broadcast or ADS-B, which are mainly used for ship and aircraft detection and tracking. So what is next for the Philippines? So as you've heard or listened in this talk, space technology and its products, such as the images and the remote sensing data, immensely benefit the Philippines, particularly in our agricultural sector. So we have shown that we have the capability, Filipinos have capability to succeed in this area through the various satellites that were successfully launched and currently being operated. So we hope that with the establishment of the Philippine Space Agency, we can expect further development and usage of space technology in our society. And lastly, the involvement of the private sector and the academe is very much necessary to further spur the growth of the Philippine space industry. So we are hoping that to attract more students or people from the industry to invest or to learn about space technology so that they will be part of the future space industry sector here in the Philippines. So that is all for my talk. Thank you very much.
Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. I'm Dr. Fernando B. Garcia Jr. I'm an associate professor and the assistant to the Dean for Planning and Development at the College of Public Health, University of the Philippines, Manila. So for this session, I will be discussing to you the idea generation and creativity, the road to achieving SDG. But before I start, I would like to thank you for inviting me to give a brief talk for the science fair of the New Era University Annual Science Fair. So I'm previously the course coordinator, the resource person and facilitator of the Municipal Leadership and Governance Program or the MLGP, a program by the Zwilig Family Foundation and the Department of Health. Isa din po akong volunteer doon sa ating University of the Philippines PGH COVID-19 Bayanihan na Operation Center. Isa din po akong faculty coach ng ilang mga project entries ng Unilab Ideas Positive. At isa po akong member ng Universal Healthcare Study Group ng University of the Philippines, Manila. So for my presentation, I'll be discussing to you this following outline. So what is health? Ano nga ba pag sinabi nating health? Is a definition from the preamble to the Constitution of the World Health Organization, which was adopted by the International Health Conference in the year 1946. According to them, health is a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being. So it's not merely on the absence of the disease or infirmity. So kasama diyan yung mental at saka social well-being natin. So in this slide, this introduces to us that since 1991 devolution, the health sector has made a lot of milestones in the ultimate goal of providing the best possible health for all its constituents. So these are some of the milestones or the structural reforms that were undertaken in the last 30 years that the government has continuously built on some of the health programs to take the nation closer to the national health aspirations. And this includes the devolution in 1991, the aligning of the DOH resources to promote local health systems development. Andyan yung fiscal autonomy of the government hospitals. There are also some programs on good governance, looking at international organization for standards. Andyan din yung integrated marketing communications and performance governance system. Then, of course, the other milestones are the enrollment of Filipinos to the PhilHealth, the use of generic drugs in 1988, and of course, yung tinatawag nating Milk Code, which was passed in 1986. And then, of course, the last one is increase of our funding for the universal healthcare through the syntaxes. Ito yung RA 10351 or the syntax law of 2012. Ano nga ba yung nandoon? It earmarked actually 85% of the revenues to health and maybe around 15% to tobacco producing regions. So these are some of the milestones that we have seen in the health systems reforms and gains in the past 30 plus years. Then of course, noong 2015, we also have the Sustainable Development Goals. So ito po yung pumalit sa MDGs natin, yung Millennium Development Goals. So the SDGs were actually set up by the United Nations General Assembly, and these are intended to be achieved by the year 2030. So now is 2021, and we have almost 9 years, more or less 9 years to go to achieve some of these sustainable development goals. So the sustainable development goals or yung tinatawag nating global goals are collections of 17 interlinked global goals which are designed to be somehow a blueprint to achieve better and more sustainable future for all. And of course, the SDGs have been embedded actually in the Philippines' long-term vision and medium-term development plans. There are also integration and what we call localization of the SDGs. As we can see in the regional development plans that are being developed also in the various regions of our country. Then at the local government unit level, they also come up with their own local development plans. So the integration really of the SDGs can be seen at the national, at the regional, and at the local level. And when we look at the health-related aspects of our sustainable development goals, we can look at SDG 1, wherein we talk about extreme poverty and vulnerability to economic, social, and environmental shocks and disaster. Under SDG number 2, we also have the malnutrition. SDG number 5, violence. SDG number 6, it talks about safety and affordability of drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene. SDG number 8, it talks about uh, safe and secure working environment. SDG number 11, housing and basic services. SDG number 13 talks about climate-related hazards and natural disasters. And we can also see the health-related aspect of the SDG under SDG number 16 because it talks about violence and legal identity. So we can see here the interconnections of health and in other sustainable development goals. However, even with the progress, with the milestone that I've shown to you in the previous slides, even if we have a lot of improvement, there are still what we call the challenges, that some of our countrymen still don't have access to the basic services that are expected to be provided to them. In fact, according to this figure, we have 60% of our countrymen who succumb to sickness and die without seeing a doctor. So in short, despite the milestones, the accomplishment, there are still what we call the persistent challenges in health outcomes, where the victims of the poor outcomes are still the poor, the marginalized, and the vulnerable population. This slide shows to us the current status of health of the poor. So every year, there are around 2,000 mothers who die due to pregnancy and related complications. And a Filipino child is born to the poorest family is 3 times more likely to not reach his or her fifth birthday compared to the one that is born to the richest family. There are 3 out of 10 children who are stunted. With regards to the healthcare cost, we can also say that every year there are 1.5 million families that are somehow pushed to poverty due to the healthcare expenditures. And of course, there are many Filipinos, marami sa ating mga kababayan, are continuing to not seek or delay check-up or healthcare facility visits, mainly due to the high cost of healthcare and unpredictable hospital bills. And of course, only those with money, mainly the rich, can fully pay for the out-of-pocket payments and often have generous health insurance. So aside from the PhilHealth, maybe they have other private health insurance. So when we talk of inequities, these are the differences in the availability of the opportunities to access health and other social services of different individuals. So in an inequitable society, individuals have this varying access to social services which are necessary to better health outcomes and improve life. Mainly when we talk of equality, this is mainly you provide them the equal resources. So whether they're poor or they're vulnerable, they receive the same amount of resources compared to the rich individuals or groups. But when we talk of equity, meaning we provide more to those who are needy, to those who are vulnerable in the population. No? But this is what we also see in the reality. So those who have more actually gets better health, no? While those who have less or who have none are still the victims of the poor health. In short, existing gross inequities in the available of opportunities to access health and other social services of people are somehow politically, socially, and economically unacceptable. So where can you help in addressing the inequities and in achieving the SDGs? No? So you can actually play an important role in addressing health inequities, in achieving the sustainable development goals, and ultimately building a better world through your innovative projects and researches. And according to the idea positive, no? So the youth consisting of 25% of the world's population are viewed as the leaders of the future. In the Philippines alone, over 40 million youths, no, that comprises around 30% of the total population, are part of the untapped pool of potentials with capability to support policy and programming to complement both the local and the national government. Sabi nga ni Jose Rizal, no, ang kabataan ay pag-asa ng bayan. And with the COVID-19 pandemic that we all experience, the more that we need to really come up with innovative activities, with innovative projects and solutions for us to really meet those targets, no, those sustainable development targets, as well as improve the well-being, improve the health of the Filipino population. So when we talk of creativity and innovation, what do we mean by creativity and innovation? So creativity is actually about coming up with the big idea. And when we talk of innovation, it's actually executing the idea or converting the idea into a successful strategy. One misconception of innovation is that innovation and creativity are the same things. Well, we do not stop idea generation or being creative, but creativity is an important half of innovation. So innovation is something different that has impact. I highlighted two important words, no, in the definition of innovation: different and impact. When we say different, it is something not about the usual way we do things, not about the business as usual. So it may also be something of the past that is relearned and applicable in the present context, or something that has never been done before. When we talk about impact, impact is a measurable result, be it better outcome indicator, performance, or efficiency of service or governance. So it precludes that there is action done, and it is assumed that the impact is somehow positive, or it produces beneficial results that are desired. So new strategies that do not create impact or that fail actually perish and will not be sustained. So in the next section, I'll be discussing to you some of the techniques, no, that you can actually use when you come up with generating ideas and mainly brainstorming what areas of researches that you can do. The Scamper technique is a technique for idea generation and creativity. A checklist of idea exploring question first suggested by Alex Osborne. Alex Osborne is a teacher of creativity, and these techniques are actually arranged, no, by Bob Eberly into a mnemonic, what we call now the Scamper technique. in using the Scamper technique, we need to define the challenge or the subject that you want to think about. Then you can ask Scamper questions about each step, component, or part of the challenge or subject and see what new ideas emerge. No? So in the succeeding slides, I will now explain to you how the Scamper is being used. So what does Scamper stands for? Scamper stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, magnify, or minify, put into use, eliminate, and reverse or rearrange. So please note that the Scamper technique are not mutually exclusive. So you can actually combine some of this technique and you are actually encouraged to come up with creative solutions by combining some of this technique. S stands for substitute. It means replacing one idea or thing with another. What can be substituted? So you can substitute the things, places, procedures, and people. So I would like to share to you what they did in La Union Medical Center. This La Union Medical Center is actually Galing po of awardee in 2004. So what they did here is they substitute the use of cash. No, instead of paying cash, they now accept payment in kind, and the system is actually designed for the innovation. So in this one, the Quezon Province, also a Galing po of awardee in 2014, they also used the substitute technique. So in 2012, the Provincial Council enacted the Health Coupon Ordinance, allowing indigent families to use coupons supplied by the provincial government to pay for medicines and medical services. So the use of coupons guarantee the provision of assistance for medical and health needs. It also somehow addresses the issue on corruption because it reduces the potential for corruption since the barangay captains and the community hospitals no longer handle cash. The other technique is the C, or the combine. So when we talk of combine, it means to put things together. What are the ideas or things that we can combine, we can mix, or we can merge and integrate? No? I'll show to you what they did in South Cotabato. So what they did here in South Cotabato, in this municipality of Sorala, is that they actually combined organic farm products and alternative medicines to come up with a program that will somehow address hunger, poverty, food security, rural improvement, environmental preservation, health development, and socioeconomic issues. So in here, what they also did in Lapuyan, in Zamboanga del Sur, is that they actually combined Western model of care, no, and the indigenous healthcare. So, for example, after conducting the dialogue with the IPs or the indigenous people of the Lapuyan, in Lapuyan, Zamboanga del Sur, the municipal mayor, this is the municipal mayor, and the municipal health officer actually included in their safe motherhood program to allow the babaylans and their hilots and other traditional medicine delivery individuals to perform some of the activities, no, in the birthing facility before giving birth, no. So after the performing the activities, the midwife or the nurse will now assist in the actual delivery. The municipality had 7 maternal deaths at the start of program in 2009. Then after they have come up with innovation, the use of health facility delivery increased, and they had 0 maternal deaths since 2011. The next technique, no, that you can actually use is to adapt, meaning to copy, to borrow, and to incorporate what can be copied, what can be adapted. Usually, what we can copy or what we can adapt are the good practices, effective strategies that are being applied elsewhere. So in here, no, this is in the municipality of Del Carmen, Surigao del Sur. A municipality isolated by bodies of water like Del Carmen, Siargao Island would make it hard, no, for people to access quality health services. This was the problem of the mayor in that area when his LGU provided sea ambulance to help, no, transport patients to the nearest RHU or hospitals. And also one of the health innovations of the municipality is the development of the Seal of Health Governance that aims to award barangays or villages that met, no, the health score as set by the local health board to address most health issues of the community. In this municipality in Kadjidjokan, Romblon, they also adopted this one. Ipon ni Mami, Buhay ni Baby. So it's just like a piggy bank system, no? So they use bamboo banks that are actually stationed in the rural health units and various barangay health stations where the mothers, the husbands, or the donors can actually save or put money in that piggy bank. Then that can be used to the delivery expenses of the mothers. So this innovation was even adopted as best practice in other municipalities too. So here, modify, when we talk of modify, mainly to change the attributes, magnify to make something bigger, more frequent, faster, or increase in scale, minify to make something smaller or less frequent, slower, etc. So what are the things that have been done, no, and incorporating this Scamper technique of modify, magnify, and minify? So what the San Pablo municipality in Zamboanga del Sur did? They customized the F track into an ambulance that can actually capable of traversing steep, rocky terrains or pick up patients, no, from their residence. No? So the other application of modify that has been done is instead of announced or known visits, surprise visits are done. So unannounced visit by the mayor and the RHU staff to areas with high number of households without sanitary toilets. Magnify, what they did here in Nueva Vizcaya province is they revitalized the health sector. They have actually expanded, no, the member of the provincial health board from 5 individuals to 23 individuals. So they increase, no, the number of membership of the provincial health board. The other thing that they did, no, using the magnify technique is they increase the health budget allocation and they increase or provide incentives as a form of augmenting support. In using minify technique, no, so from local health board at the municipal level, they now adopted barangay health board at the barangay level were instituted. And replicating the concept of the interlocal health zone, the municipality of Tubongan in Iloilo actually organized, no, they organized their barangay into what we call the inter-barangay health zone. So the other technique that we can actually use is the P or the put into other use. So some of the questions under the put into use technique, we need to think of what else can something be used for and how else can people be engaged other than the usual. So in here, no, in Balindong, Lanao del Sur, as part of their massive information drive to promote health-seeking behavior, they actually engage the imams or the high priests in Islam in their distribution of leaflets during Fridays. In the other areas, in Kadjidjokan, the barangay captains are actually asked to provide lecture in family planning, IEC, of the rural health unit staff. Under the E technique, it means to eliminate, to remove some elements or parts, or reduce to core functionality and omit non-essential or simplify. So how can we use the technique of eliminate? The local government units actually implemented a Buntis Congress. So it's an application actually of the technique of eliminate, wherein it is a one-stop activity or venue that actually allowed women to access many services at one time in one venue. Access to information actually eliminates or reduces the paper requirement. It also facilitates transition of service availment of the patient. Davao City they also implemented this one-stop shop, wherein all the services that are being provided by the Department of Social Welfare and Development, by the PCHO, by the Philippine Health Insurance System, it's actually located in one venue. So people will no longer travel from one place to another just to access the services of these offices. And of course, the last technique is the R, meaning to reverse, to turn the other way around or change the order or sequence or schedule. So what arrangement? Schedule might be better. What components can be interchanged? So in here, in Pilar Sorsogon, they also come up with the 24/7 roving ambulance. So there are 24/7 roving teams that are deployed to actually pick up patients at designated areas. So through coordination with the barangays and utilization of the emergency contact numbers in the RHU, the patients can be picked up anytime, 24/7. So from patients residence to the birthing facility, the InNEUvation allowed for the opposite. So personnel now from the birthing facility actually go to the patient's residence for pick-up. The other innovation that they applied, the reverse or rearrange, is the introduction of the halfway homes. So the halfway homes change the sequence by adding another area or another place where the families or the pregnant mothers can actually stay before and after the delivery. I would like to end my presentation by challenging you, the youth, as our future leader. Adaptive work is hard, but it's necessary or important. So where do you want to take yourself in your community, in your leadership journey? Adaptive work is different and more difficult than the technical fixes because it involves working with the people to change the values, working with them to change their behavior, their belief, and working with them to really achieve what the desired future towards the achievement of our sustainable development goals. So with that, thank you, and that ends my presentation.
I would like to thank New Era University for inviting me to their NEU Science Fair in 2021. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ren Carjan Diego, and I am the Country Channel Sales Manager of Beam Philippines. So just to give some introduction or To give you some information about myself, I have been in the IT industry for more than 20 years, and I have had my master's degree also in computer science. I have worked in different IT vendors which are prominent in the industry, namely Emerson, and we have Microsoft Philippines and Lenovo Philippines, just to name a few. But as of now, my current role is a country sales channel sales manager for Vim Philippines. So for our topic for today, I will talk to you about how you can modernize your backup strategy or protection strategy, not only in your personal devices or and how you can use your devices to secure your information or your data. But also, I would also like to talk about yung mga nasa IT industry standards, how they protect their data. So now, our agenda would be the following. As you can see, we are going to talk about the challenges that we have had encountered for the past year, and how COVID has affected the IT landscape specifically, and how are the legacy backup solutions coping up with the today's environment, and how are we going to protect your modern data. We are going to talk also about the 3-2-1 rule, the on-site and off-site backup. We are going to talk about what is RTO and RPO. We are going to talk about long-term storage, and just summary to recap everything. As we all know, last year and even this year have been very challenging for all of us. In fact, ang sabi sa statistics, 11%, there's an 11% growth in the global economic uncertainty. So ano yung mga naging factors, no, why the IT industry have uncertainties? So most of us have begun working at home. Many employees are working at home, and the infrastructure, the systems who are handling those systems are left in the office. So there are no personnel that can monitor those applications 24/7, just to keep them secure, safe, and running. And most of us, or most of the companies really use yung mga cloud services na tinatawag. So nandyan yung mga ginagamit natin. For example, in your school, sa mga studies ninyo, yung Uble, yung Zoom, kapag meron kayong mga meetings, may mga classes kayo. So dati naman, during the times when we have face-to-face activities, wala namang masyadong gumagamit ng mga ganong klaseng mga applications or services. Kasi nga, lahat tayo are all in the same place doing mga classes natin. And isa sa mga naging factors din, no, kung bakit nagkaroon ng uncertainties is dumami yung ransomware attacks. So for those who are not quite familiar with ransomware, so isa siyang we can consider a ransomware attack as a disaster sa isang company, regardless kung gaano kaliit or gaano kalaki yung data and yung company. So kasi ano ba yung nangyayari kapag na-attack ng ransomware yung isang company? So ang nangyayari dyan is yung data nila will be inaccessible to them. So those data can be confidential. Yun ang pinaka-importante sa lahat, no? The confidentiality of the data. And when those data are being ransomed or are being kept by the attackers, you have no choice but to pay them a ransom para ma-access mo ulit yung data. So ano yung mga nagiging solutions ng mga companies tungkol dyan? And worse, kapag hindi nila binayaran yung ransom na yun, and for example, wala rin silang magandang data protection strategy, hindi na nila marirecover yung data. So that's one of the worst things that can happen in a company, because those data, lalo na kapag mga banks, yung customers. Ang paano nila i-explain yun sa mga customers nila kasi mawawala yung revenue nila and most importantly, yung trust ng mga customers sa kanila. So yung kapag if you're going to look at the IT landscape as a general, how COVID has affected it, dumami yung mga applications, cloud services na ginagamit. Lalo na mga software as a service applications, and in effect, yung mga hackers or mga attackers focus on ransomware attack. So how does this information affect yung data protection strategy ng isang company? Ngayon kung titingnan natin, not all companies have a modern plan for their modern data. So ano yung ginagawa nila? They stick to what they know, they stick to what they have. Kaya yun yung tinatawag natin na legacy technologies. So yung mga legacy technologies na yun must be able to cope up dun sa mga increasing demands ng mga customers. Kaya lang, hindi natin maiwasan. Merong mga applications and servers na masisira pa rin. Meron tayong mga backup plans, strategies that will still fail. And tulad ng sinabi natin kanina, if we are going to restore those applications, information, they are most likely to fail by an average of 58%. So medyo malaki yun kung titingnan natin, lalo na kapag malaki yung company or yung data na pinag-uusapan natin. And most of this na gumagamit ng mga applications na yan, hindi lang naman millions yung pinag-uusapan, mostly billions. So ngayon, ano yung promise na tinatawag nating modern data protection? So we have yung what we have to meet the RPOs and RTOs, which we are going to discuss later. And then we also have what we call yung mga acceleration of Microsoft Office 365, AWS, Azure, and Google. So yung mga applications na yan dati, hindi naman tayo aware sa mga ganyan na kailangan natin na meron pala. So dati, for example, for Microsoft Office 365, we don't care about Microsoft Teams para gamitin to communicate with our peers, friends, or even office mates. So yung ginagawa lang talaga natin is we call them, we text them, send messages to them. But as of now, nagbago na nga yung landscape na yun. And then for ransomware, tulad ng sinabi natin kanina, we must be able to detect, protect, and recover. Tapos you can see terms here wherein sinasabi dyan, it must be immutable, air gap, and tested. So later on, we are going to discuss that. And then we have what we call yung mga Kubernetes native backup. Ano ba yung relationship nito sa mga ginagamit nating applications na yan? So mostly these are connected sa mga rapid deployments. When we say rapid deployments, kapag kailangan ng isang customer na i-access agad-agad yung information or yung application na yon, and in a large scale, kahit global scale, gumagamit sila ng tinatawag na container applications. Yung mga container applications na yon are up in the cloud. And yung mga containers na yon have applications that are very agile. Ibig sabihin ng agile, kailangan makapag-adjust siya dun sa requirements ng customer. Ano ba yung mga example ng applications na yan? So one example is Facebook. Another example, for example, sa gaming, baka yung iba naglalaro dyan ng ML or yung iba mayroong mga Axie accounts. So most likely, yung mga applications na gano'n na napakarami on a global scale yung gumagamit uses cloud containers. So ngayon, what we are looking into if we are going to talk about modern data protection is to master the 3-2-1 rule. Pero may bonus pa tayo, meron pa tayong 1 and 0. So ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng 3-2-1-1-0 rule? So in this case, makikita ninyo, 3 means 3 different copies of data. So ibig sabihin, kung meron kang information, let's say for example, meron kang date, may mga pictures ka sa cellphone mo. That's one copy. And then yung ginawa mo is you copy those pictures sa laptop mo. That's the second copy. And yung gusto mo, magkaroon pa ng copy doon sa external hard drive mo. So that's the third copy. So kapag meron tayo nun, namimit natin yung number 3 na to sa 3-2-1 rule. So ngayon, ano naman yung 2? 2 means 2 different media. So yung sinabi nating example kanina, meron ka sa cellphone mo, meron ka sa laptop mo, and you also have a copy in your external hard drive. That is more than enough na. Kasi 2 lang naman yung industry standard. Pero ano yung ibig sabihin ng offsite copy, which is 1 dito sa 3-2-1 rule natin? So kapag sinabing offsite copy, if we are looking into an enterprise level type of offsite copy, ibig sabihin, malayo dun sa production environment. Wala siya sa production environment. In your case, for example, yung copy ng pictures ninyo sa external hard drive, yun yung 1 ninyo. Offsite copy, pwedeng nasa shelf lang ninyo, nakatago siya. Yan. So ano naman yung 1 na nandito sa slide natin, no? Which is sinasabing air gap or immutable. Kapag sinabing air gap, di ba usually kapag nakakonect tayo sa Wi-Fi, sa internet, we just connect and then we browse the internet. Sa mga enterprise companies or even sa ibang mga companies, those lines must be secured kasi they access information doon sa main server nila. So kailangan air gap yun or secured just for the employees of the company kung sino lang yung merong authority to access. Ano naman yung immutable? So when we talk about immutable, ibig sabihin, hindi siya mababago. So for example, meron kang, balikan natin yung pictures sa phone mo, no? So kapag sinabing immutable, walang pwedeng mag-delete ng pictures na yon, ikaw lang. And walang ibang pwedeng gumalaw, magbago, mag-edit, mag-copy, papunta sa iba, kundi ikaw lang. Yan. So ngayon, ano naman yung 0? Yung 0, no errors after backup and testing. So yung lahat ng sinasabi natin about backup will have no sense if you are not able to recover your data. Sasabihin mo, yes, we have backup. We have tons of backup. Terabytes, petabytes of backup. Pero the question is, can you recover those data? Yan. So, yun yung mga questions kailangan nating tanungin sa sarili natin if we are able to comply with the 3-2-1-1-0 rule. If we are able to say yes, then most likely, we are very secure na because we are following the industry standards. So right now, ano naman yung on-site and off-site backup? Kasi kanina, we have an example na meron tayong different copies of data, meron namang naka-off-site ngayon, meron namang naka-on-site ngayon. So if we are going to look at this one, so let me point this out. Okay? This is your production. So for example, isipin nyo na lang yung production environment is New Era University. So within New Era University, meron silang mga servers doon. Meron silang mga applications. So VM in this case, in this example, stands for virtual machine. A virtual machine is just like an actual server. Pero ang kagandahan ng isang virtual machine, pwede mo siyang ilagay sa isang physical machine lang. So isipin nyo na lang na parang ganito. Kunyari, meron kang, for example, you have a laptop or you have a desktop. So usually, di ba, isang Windows operating system lang yung meron sa laptop or desktop mo. But kapag meron kang isang virtual environment within a laptop or within a desktop, pwede kang magkaroon ng madaming Windows environment doon. So, yun yung mga virtual machines. So, ano ba yung advantage nun? Sa isang piece of hardware, marami kang mga applications na pwedeng i-run and mas control mo siya. So, ngayon, yung sinasabi natin, ano ba yung importance na meron kang backup sa mga VMs na yun, no? Sabi natin, on-site backup. So, if this is the production environment or this is New Era University, ibig sabihin, within New Era, within the school, meron kang production data, which is this one, and meron kang backup data. So, gagamitin mo yung mga applications na pang backup para magkaroon ka ng second copy into the backup storage. So, yung sa example natin kanina, for example, ito yung nasa phone ninyo, and this one, ito yung data ninyo sa laptop. Yan. So, paano naman yung tinatawag na off-site backup? So, how are we going to do that? So, for example, we have a DR. Ano ba yung DR? DR stands for disaster recovery, or in this example, a DR site, a disaster recovery site. When do we use or when do we apply a disaster recovery site? We plan this out if you want to make sure that whenever something happens in the production, we can still run these virtual machines into another site, which is the DR site. Yan. So, yun yung gamit ng DR site. When a site is inaccessible and you want to power up or buhayin ninyo yung mga applications ninyo into a different site, you use or you plan out for a DR site. So ngayon, sa DR site, pwede kang magkaroon ng isa pang copy ng backup mo. So sa example natin kanina, dun sa external hard disk. So parang ito yon yung ginagawa natin sa DR site. Meron tayong copy dun sa external hard disk. In this case, meron tayong another copy sa DR site. Yan. So, yun yung on-site backup, which is nasa yung era or production environment. Off-site backup, pwedeng yun yung nasa kabilang branch ng yung era. Ngayon, ano naman yung RTO and RPO? When we talk about RTO and RPO, we talk about objectives. Yung RTO stands for Recovery Time Objective. RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective. So ano yung pinagkaiba ng dalawa? So if you're going to look at this, let me highlight this again. So this is RTO, meaning the maximum time allowed to recover systems from an outage. In this example, X means the disaster. And kapag tinanong ka kung ano yung RTO mo, sabi niya 4 hours. Ibig sabihin, dapat within 4 hours, mabuhay mo yung system na yan. So within 4 hours, dapat gumagana na yan. Kasi kapag lumagpas yan sa 4 hours, magkakaroon yan ng effect dun sa mga customers, dun sa business namin. So ano yung isang example nun? So for example, meron kayong ina-access na module, no? Or ng mga learning materials. Ngayon, hindi niyo siya ma-access. Ang sinabi dun sa notification, you will be able to access the system maybe 5 a.m., 6 a.m. So, yun yung yung tinatawag na RTO. Pero ano naman yung tinatawag natin na RPO or yung Recovery Point Objective? Ang sabi dito, the maximum allowed data loss the business deems acceptable during a failure. So ano yung example nun? Let's look at this again. Meron tayong disaster. Ang last backup mo ay 2 p.m. So for example, ang disaster mo nangyari ng 5 p.m. Pero ang last backup mo ay 2 p.m. So ibig sabihin, kapag binuhay mo siya, ang lahat ng data pagkatapos ng 2 p.m., wala na siya. So kaya ngayon, dapat meron tayong plan kung ano yung RPO and RTO natin. Is in most cases, ito yung nagdi-dictate ng importance, no, kung paano natin gagamitin yung data or paano natin formulate yung backup strategy natin. Ano pa yung isang example nito? So for example, in terms of sa parents ninyo, nagpadala ng pera sa inyo, no? So sabihin niya, "Nak, nagpadala ako ng pera last week para sa allowance mo." Tapos sabi niya, "Nagpadala ulit ako ng pera kahapon lang para pang tuition mo." Ngayon, when you went to the bank, kasi gusto mo nang i-withdraw yung mga pera na pinadala sa ng parents mo. Ang sabi ng bank, "Naku, sorry, may problema kami sa system. Pwede mo pang makita yan, pwede mo siyang ma-withdraw after 4 hours. So, yun yung RTO na inaantay mo. Ever since nasira yung yung system, tapos sinabi niya, after 4 hours mo pa siya pwedeng ma-withdraw. So, yun yung RTO natin. Pero, paano naman natin i-relate yung RPO? So, ngayon, dumating na yung 4 hours. Pero when you check your account, yung nakita mo lang na pinadala sa'yo is yung allowance. Wala yung pinadalang pang tuition fee mo. So ngayon, ang ibig sabihin, ang RPO ay yung up to the point na pinadala lang ng parents mo, yung allowance. So paano yung gagawin ng bank kapag hindi nila na-recover yung pinadala ng parents mo for your tuition fee? Yun ang importance ng meron kang recovery plan for RTO and RPO. Yan. So, yung example na yun is just for one customer. Paano kung madami pa yung mga customers na yun? Kaya mahalaga na ang RPO and RTO natin ay maiksi lang to mitigate yung mga data losses na yun. So ngayon, if you are going to talk about a recovery plan also, kailangan isipin natin kung saan natin siya ilalagay. No? Meron tayong long-term storage na pinag-uusapan. So it can be in the form of a tape or a cloud storage. So kapag sinabing tape, yan yung usual na nakikita natin dito sa picture, no? So just focus on this one. So these are the tapes na pwede nating paglagyan ng data natin or ng backups natin. So these tapes are mostly used by enterprise mga customers. Based on my experience, ang mostly na gumagamit ng tapes ay yung mga banks kasi kailangan nila ng mga compliance reports. For example, may nag-audit sa kanila, kailangan nilang ipakita yung data 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Sa tape na lang nila kukunin yung data na yon. Hindi na nila kukunin dun sa production storage tulad ng nasa example natin kanina. Bakit ganon? Kasi kapag puro yung production storage yung ginamit natin para sa mga data for 10 years and 15 years, meron yung affecting factor pagdating sa cost naman in maintaining the cost. Yung tape kasi mas mura yung solution na to, but at the same time, kaya niyang iserve yung purpose ng archiving. So yung iba naman, gumagamit ng cloud. So yung ibang mga examples na siguro familiar na kayo, no? Itong iCloud or Google Drive or Dropbox. Ito yung mga generally available na mga cloud storage. Yung most dito, libre lang, no? Pero itong mga to like AWS and Azure, ito yung mga enterprise cloud storage na pwede nating paglagyan ng backup natin for long term. So putting it all together, ano ba yung mga na-discuss natin? So kanina sinabi natin, no, kailangan meron tayong 3-2-1-1-0 rule. So yung strategy na yon i-apply natin. So meron tayong copy key production sa storage na to. Yun yung live data na ginagamit natin. So meron din tayong backup storage wherein yung tawag natin doon ay repository. And then we have yung tape. So meron tayong 3 copies of data, 2 different media which is the disk and the tape, and 1 can be offsite. So yung isa pang option para sa offsite is yung mga AWS and Azure na storage na sinabi natin kanina. In other terms, ang tawag sa kanya ay blob storage. Yan. So ang DR site naman natin, pwede natin gawin yan. It's either on-premise or sa cloud din. So in general, if we are going to look at it, no, ang isang backup strategy ay hindi lang applicable for enterprise environment. Ang dami ko ng mga experience sa mga customers na nakakausap ko, no. And ang strategy na to ay applicable to all, kahit sa atin, kasi we can have different data that we access all the time. Pero ang disaster happens only once. And minsan lang yan mangyari. Kapag nangyari yan and we don't have anything to restore or to get those information back, nandun yung nagiging problem. Kaya dapat maging proactive tayo sa ganung approach. Kasi nga, data as of now is a commodity na, no? Parang ang lahat is gearing towards digital transformation. Kaya kapag yung iba nababalitaan natin, na-hack yung account nila, nawala yung details nila about, for example, sa credit card nila or whatsoever in a e-commerce website. So, yun na yung mga target kasi ng hackers ngayon. So, kailangan i-secure natin yung data natin, air gap, immutable. You must have different copies of data. You must have different types of medium kung saan natin i-save yung data natin. And we must secure them. So with that, I thank you, and I hope you got something from this webinar, and hope to be part of the NEU Science Fair again in the coming years. Thank you very much.